My laboratory is interested in how blood vessels contribute to disease. So we have a particular focus on cancer. Even during this pandemic, we're experiencing a time where there are over 430,000 Australians that are living with cancer. So we can't forget that these patients still need treatment.
We've all seen the reports of the crucial role university research is playing in trying to find a coronavirus vaccine. But equally important research, in labs like this one at the University of South Australia, is also continuing on through the pandemic.
Research is an expensive exercise, and only through new developments can we obtain the new treatments that we're trying to find.
Universities conduct about 1/3 of the research of all Australian research. Right? They fund over half of that themselves from their own resources.
There have been financial distress signals sent out by the university sector for months in the wake of the coronavirus. The government has repeatedly refused, for example, to extend JobKeeper to their workforce, and the universities have claimed up to 20,000 jobs may be at risk. But what isn't always appreciated is that it is research that is at risk, not just academic jobs. In a pre-budget submission this week, Universities Australia estimates that around $3.5 billion, or more than 1/4 of university research and development activity, is under threat this year alone, because borders have been closed to international students and the fees they pay, and that they could lose up to $16 billion in revenue over the next 4 years. Universities globally are facing the same revenue shortfalls, and countries like the United Kingdom have stepped in to provide short-term relief, which our universities have now moved this week to formally beg for.
And on the right-hand side, you see the same patients treated with proton radiotherapy. Michaela, what difference do you see?
I see a lot more sparing of the normal healthy brain.
Radiation scientist Eva Bazak runs a program that flies in doctors from remote areas and trains them in ultrasound. The funding runs out next year, and Eva finds herself looking for benefactors in a Hunger Games marketplace for grants, where even philanthropic money is drying up.
That also means that the competition from around Australia for this limited amount of funds will be more severe.
Eva's specialisation is in developing more targeted radiation treatments for children with cancer.
It's really scary, isn't it? Because not only it puts our projects at risk, it impacts the translations of those projects into the real life environment.
Does the federal government recognise the impact on the national R&D budget of this loss of revenue to universities and their research?
Yes, we do, and we're working with the sector at the moment to understand the challenge. We've said that we would take into consideration the current circumstances as we lead into the October budget, and then also obviously there'll be another budget in May, so we will look to see what we can do to help and support with the short term and then with the medium to long term.
Universities were surprised by the government's move last week to give itself the power to veto agreements universities make with overseas governments and institutions, despite the fact universities already work with intelligence agencies to monitor potential risks.
I was consulted, and I've committed to work with the sector to make sure that these changes are in the national interest, that they deal with foreign interference, but also do so in a way that international collaboration on research will continue. We have to be doing everything to make sure that there are no gaps.
But foreign students and foreign interference aren't the only problems facing universities. With jobs drying up and gap years not an option, universities are facing a huge surge in students opting to study. In New South Wales, early applications for undergraduate degrees are up 35% for school leavers and 25% for others, and postgraduate enrolments are up 30% on last year's numbers too. This surge is happening in every state, and at the University of South Australia, Vice-Chancellor David Lloyd is bracing for a big year.
We are seeing increased applications for onshore domestic students to come to the university, but significantly increased numbers of online applications. A 70% increase in applications for online education to UniSA Online.
The catch here, though, is that the federal government has put a cap on the funding that universities get to teach domestic students.
The main way it's going to do that is by reducing the average tuition subsidy that the government pays to universities. And effectively, that will require universities to deliver more student places for every $1 million that the government provides to them.
What it'll mean is that there's a lower resource per student, so there'll be less teaching resource for every university student that we take in, because in essence the pie is being sliced thinner, but there's no more food to go around.
While universities will get less funding per student overall, the government will lower the student fees for degrees of national priority, like nursing, engineering, languages and science.
But they are paying for those reduced student contributions partly by increasing student contributions in the fields the government doesn't want to encourage. So that's most of the humanities, the social sciences, law and business courses. In the case of the humanities and social sciences, is more than double what they pay now.
There's been no evidence that actually determines the outcomes or the choices of individuals.
We saw when the Labor government introduced changes, especially for science and maths in 2009, a near doubling of the amount of students who undertook science and maths degrees.
HECS debt is something that's always going to hang over you. With the fee hikes, it's definitely going to be bearing a lot more over you.
Year 12 student Sam McRae is making the most of what will be his last year in his hometown of Griffith in central New South Wales. With exams just months away, the government's overhaul of university funding will double the cost of Sam's degree.
I just kind of have to live with it. We picked the subjects that we wanted to do in year 11 and 12 for the New South Wales HSC, and there's nothing we can do.
Whether the moves to nudge students into priority degrees will work remains to be seen. But along the way, there will be many thousands who simply shoulder more debt.
I'm feeling pretty stressed about it all, but I'm feeling pretty excited in a way. That there's a lot of challenges ahead to recognise and deal with.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.